Some analysis on all of this, we can speak to Samuel Ramani. He's a researcher from the University of Oxford in the UK and joins us live. Mr. Ramani, thank you very much for joining us. Let's pick up, first of all, if we can, on that meeting in Moscow. What are you expecting to come out of that meeting?
Well, I think it's a bit too optimistic at this stage to predict that there's going to be a ceasefire that's actually going to result in major changes on the ground. But what I think the meeting can do is potentially provide a platform for a new de-escalation agreement, effectively a revival or a revitalization of the agreement that was signed in Sochi in 2018. But on the ground, I think that things will largely stay as they are. Assad had an interview today, and he was talking about how he wanted to take over Idlib, and he was already eyeing the northern Syrian Turkish safe zone to take over. And there were clashes in Sarakeb today that resulted in Turkish fatalities and Turkey advancing further into these areas. So we shouldn't expect an immediate change on the ground, but rather just a platform and a framework and a groundwork for de-escalation.
And there is talk, as you say, of perhaps a renewed Sochi agreement, the Sochi agreement, which of course has been broken, and the lines of that changed. Are you expecting there to be perhaps a new signing of that Sochi agreement? Probably the Moscow agreement, won't it? And a changing of where those lines of control are. But that then leaves the question of what happens to those Turkish observation points.
Well, that's a very good question. I think that we can't really say for sure what's going to happen, but looking at some of the Russian state media commentaries that I've seen, the Russians are certainly thinking of the idea that perhaps revising the Sochi agreement to freeze the borders where they are now. So effectively, where the Turkish advances have occurred from Operation Spring Shield, where Assad's offensive have occurred since then, freezing the borders at the current place. And then the question of observation posts is certainly up in the air. Turkey would certainly want guarantees of the security of those posts, but Russia has turned a blind eye repeatedly to Assad's, first of all, encircling those posts and then now targeting Turkish forces. So it's hard to see whether the Turkish delegation will really trust Russia's assurances on that issue.
And Samuel, you have been observing this war as we have for the past 9 years. This sort of end of the war fight that's happening in Idlib has been telegraphed for years. The Syrian regime were busing people into this area for years from other areas that they had conquered. How do you see this playing out now that the Turkish army is on the field? Because it seems a quite intractable situation.
It definitely is an intractable situation. I think that we're seeing some of the worst humanitarian consequences that we've seen since the start of the war. The 900,000 refugees in less than 2 months. I mean, that's a staggering statistic. And also, I think that, yes, if the military campaign were to continue, it would likely devolve into something of a stalemate. Turkey has managed to gain control over the Syrian National Army and many of the rebel forces and created a coherent opposition command force, more coherent than it was before. And Assad is determined to conquer Idlib at all costs, and has got Russia's backing on that and Iran's backing too. Keep in mind that Hezbollah is deploying forces here in larger numbers too. So if there isn't a de-escalation agreement, what we'll just see is stasis, movements of the line of control back and forth, almost like a prolonged kind of trench warfare, a war of attrition.
Okay, we wait and see what comes out of that meeting. Samuel Ramani in Oxford, thank you very much for joining us now.